Hello and welcome to the second part in my tutorial series on how to build a Dalek in Blender. Thank you for following along so far. If you've completed the last bit, this is where we should have left stuff. So we have the skirt section, we have the hemispheres, and we have the fender. And today we're going to be focusing on building the shoulder section, which is the part that goes above it. So we reset everything back to the world 0 position. So it basically means every time we add a new mesh, we can start modeling from 0 rather than having to do a bunch of maths on top of it. So what we're going to be focusing on today is the shoulder section, which is in 3 parts and they're all kind of on top of each other. So we've got the shoulders themselves, which is this part here. We've got these little metal bands that go all the way around the shoulders, and then we've got the mesh that the slats attach onto. We might get around to doing the slats today. I was going to do the gun box too, but I think I want to do a separate tutorial on all the objects that go within the gun box as well. So last time we modeled just using the numbers in the coordinate system in Blender. This time we're going to model on top of the reference images just because it makes life a little bit easier. I also noticed last time I say make life a little bit easier way too much. So every time I say that, I want you to put a comment in there telling me to shut up. So we need to start making some space for ourselves. But before we start hiding stuff, what I want to do is click on the skirt, tab into edit mode, press 2 to go into edge select, and I want to shift alt and select this top ring of edges here, and then I'm going to shift D to duplicate, right click to confirm that, and then press P and separate by selection. So now we have an outline of the top of the skirt just as a 2D layer. So if I hide, and by the way, you can hide objects by either pressing this eye icon over here, like that, or you can just click it and press H. So I'm going to hide the skirt, I'm going to hide the hemispheres, I'm going to hide the fender, and then we've just got this outline here. Now what we need to do is start adding some references into Blender. So if we go back onto our plans, what I need to be looking at is effectively this area here, and I want to bring this image into Blender. So what I'm going to do is hold Windows, Shift and S. I'm going to drag a little box around the area I need. So bring up this window, and then I'm going to Control S, save that as shoulder positioning. Then back into Blender. What I want to do is take my skirt outline. I'm going to highlight these 2 central verts here. Press Shift and S, cursor to selected. Then I'm going to Control A, go down to where it says Image, Background, and then in my References folder, I'm going to grab Shoulder Positioning, bring that in, and now I need to start lining this outline over here up with my skirt. So I'm going to change the Transform Pivot Point to 3D Cursor, and then I'm going to start clicking and dragging things in place. So we're going to make sure our picture is selected, press R, then rotate -90 to get it in the right orientation, and then grab X, try to line everything up like that, grab Y, and we're going to line the front up with the front like that. Now obviously it's way too big, so because we've set this to 3D cursor, everything that we do to transform it is going to go around here. So because we've lined the front up, everything will scale down to this point. So again, with the picture selected, press S for scale and just start dragging it down and scroll in, drag it down, and it probably won't be perfect, but we just want everything to line up as close as possible. Right, just like that. Cool, so that is the top of our skirt, and now we're ready to start building on top of it. So what I'm going to do again is press Shift S, cursor to world origin, and then I'm going to change this back to bounding box center. So we need to start building the shape of the shoulders, or at least the bottom of the shoulders. It's sort of this flattened egg shape, and there are a couple of different ways of doing it. So we could start using the numbers on here, but they're kind of more of a reference than an actual useful tool, and it's just basically because 3D modeling and 2D planes don't quite work the same. It's fine. So we're going to add a circle. So if we go Shift A, add mesh, circle, and it's too big and it pops it right in the center. So the amount of vertices we have is too small. I want to change that to 64. You can put however many you want. Basically, you want multiples of 32, just because then you'll have a vert in the center of the circle. So one here and one here. But let's do that again. Circle 64, and we want the radius to be roughly 692 divided by 2. And what we can also do is go into our empty, the image here, and go into object data properties, click opacity, and we can just drop the opacity of that down. It just makes it a bit easier to see what we're doing. So this is our circle, and let's just rename this shoulders bottom. And as you can see, it doesn't really line up. So I'm going to introduce a few different tools into this. First thing, let's tab into edit mode, press 1 for vertex mode, click and drag, and just get rid of all of these vertices on this side. So X, delete vertices, and then we're going to go into our modifiers tab over here, add modifier, generate mirror, and press clipping. And that means we don't have to do everything twice. Everything we do on this side will be repeated onto this side. Now we can start lining things up. So let's start by lining up this front edge with this edge here. So grab Y, move it along the Y axis, just drag that back. There we are. Excellent. Now we're going to do something which you may be aware of. It's called proportional editing. It basically means we don't have to move every individual point. We can move them in a kind of smooth group. I'll show you what I mean. So again, tab into edit mode. And we can do this by either going up to this icon up here and pressing on that, or just use O as the hotkey. O for proportional editing, apparently. And we can just start tracing out the shape of this. So if I grab this vert here and just start moving it around, you see it's moving way too much. What we need to do, if we press G again, you see this circle up here. This is called our circle of influence, and it dictates how many points we affect with what we're doing. So let's scroll that back in. Just press enter, scroll in again, and then if I G and move that, you can see what we're doing, which is creating this shape. Now this takes a bit of fine tuning, and it won't always line up straight away. There will be a bit of trial and error. So GX, scroll out and in with your mouse wheel to get the result you need. And again, this can be a bit of a tedious procedure, but once you get the hang of it, it's fine, because we can just copy the object over. So again, all I'm doing, scrolling in, scrolling out, and just moving these verts around. This one over here, let's drag him over there. That's close. And then let's just square this off a little bit, GX. I think we've done it. Excellent. So now we have this sort of squared off egg shape, which is exactly what we need. Lovely. Right, so now we need to build the top of the shoulder section, which gives us a really useful dimension here. It is 553 diameter, so add mesh, circle, 553 divided by 2. There we go. But it's in the wrong place, and there's a really easy way of lining this up. So we can see on the dimensions here that it is 89 mils away from the front of the top section. So what I want to do is go into edit mode. We can turn off proportional editing. I'm going to select this vert here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then tab out of edit mode, go to object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor, and then let's turn on our snapping settings up here and change snap to vertex. And now when we drag this, GY, we can drag it so it snaps exactly to this front point here. We can turn off snapping now, and then it is 89, so grab Y 89. Now again, they're perfectly flat on top of each other, which isn't what we want. So we can see from this dimension here, it is 323 mils up from the bottom. So if we then go into item and in the Z location, just type in 323. Oh, let's rename the circle shoulders top as well. We can hide this lower skirt outline. And there we go. That object and that object are now perfectly positioned. For this one, we don't need to do this, but it just makes my life a little bit more straightforward. I was going to say easier, but I didn't. Object, set origin, origin to geometry, and it just brings it back to the geometry. This one, we can even apply the mirror modifier now because we don't need it anymore. Apply. And that is the first part sorted. Now, what we can do here, if we grab both these objects, so hold one, press shift, then click the other, Control J, and then tab into edit mode. They're now one object. We want to start making this a complete object. So if we go into vertex mode by pressing 1, highlight this vert, this vert, this vert, and this vert, press F for face, and then press 2 for edge mode, select this face here, and just press F, and it'll start automatically filling these faces. So let's go all the way around. You can just hold F, and it'll go, whoop. There you are. And now that is one complete object. Let's tab out of that. I bet if I go into face orientation, it's the wrong way around. So to fix that issue, go back into edit mode, press A to select everything, press Shift and N, and that recalculates the normals. So now that's all around the right way. Excellent. This is our shoulder section. Let's call it shoulders. Right, perfect. Now we can start adding the other elements on top of it, and we can build them all out of this shoulder section. So what we need to do is go back into our plans, and we want this section here. So again, Windows, Shift and S, drag around, and there we are. And then Control S. Let's call this shoulders, collar, side. And then go into 3 for orthographic mode. With our shoulder selected, let's press tab to go into edit mode. Select this point at the front here. Shift S, cursor to selected. Tab out of edit mode. Let's go into wireframe by pushing this up here. Shift A, add image, background, shoulders, collar, side. In fact, what I want to do is go back into our shoulders, tab, and we want this point here, so right at the center here. Again, press Shift S, cursor to selected, and then let's drag him down over there. Let's line the front point of this up here. There we are, and let's change our transform pivot point to 3D cursor, and again with our background image selected, let's just scale that in until the top lines up with the top of the shoulder section itself, which is there. Perfect. Right, now we're going to start building these shoulder bands. So we've got all the measurements that we need here, which is really, really useful. What I want to do is create a copy. So shoulder selected, Shift D, and then we can hide our original shoulder section. And then we've just got the copy here. Let's go Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry. So that's right in the center. And Shift S, Cursor to World Origin. And we need to start making some changes. So most of the changes we need are actually on the plans. So the bottom of the band is actually 30 millimeters lower than the bottom of the shoulders. So easiest way of doing that, tab into edit mode, select all these bottom verts and just go G, Z, minus 30. Perfect. But now you can see it's far too narrow. So it does say on the plans kind of idealized sizes, but it doesn't really work that way, and I'll show you the best way around it. So what I'm going to do is bring back the skirt section by just tapping that there, and all I'm going to do with these lower verts selected here is press S for scale. I'm going to press Shift and Z to make sure it doesn't try to scale on the Z axis, and then I'm just going to drag it up until it clears the skirt, which is around about there. Just make sure if you tab back into solid, you can see nothing's poking through. That's lovely. And then back into 3, wireframe again. We're going to select these ones at the top here. Scale again, so S, Shift and Z, and then let's just drag him. That's perfect. There we go, and that's all we needed to do for that. So if I go back into solid view, let's hide the skirt again, and then I'll bring back my shoulder section. There. You can see how one object is inside the other. Let's turn off face orientation. We don't need that anymore. Yeah, one object is inside the other. So there's our shoulders, there's our shoulder bands. So let's rename that shoulder bands. Lovely. And now we need to start cutting these shoulder bands. So again, let's hide the shoulders. And we're going to do the same trick that we did for the skirt. So what I want to do, with the shoulder band selected, go back into wireframe, tab into edit mode, select these lower verts, Shift and S, cursor to selected. Lovely. And then we're going to add a cube. So tab out of edit mode, Shift A, add mesh cube. What size did we say it was? It was 323, add 30. So 323, add 30. Again, that only puts it halfway up. So let's add 323, add 30 into its Z coordinates. Boop. Oh, no, that was wrong. Why is it doing that? You know what? Forget it. Let's just do this an easy way. We are going to turn on snapping again, change it to edge, and just drag this cube up until it snaps to that edge there. So the lower edge of the bands. And then turn off snapping, and let's just drag it G, Y, and grab it to the front. And also let's start changing the opacity of this. So select our empty again, data, opacity, and just drop that down. Okay. Do you know what actually we can do while we're doing this? Let's create the shell for the mesh as well. So when I say the mesh, I mean this little bit here, because it is basically the same shape. So let's Windows Shift and S, copy that, select that, save as shoulder mesh, X. And again, what I want to do, go back into my shoulder bands objects, tab into edit mode, select this vert at the top here, Shift S, cursor to selected. I'm going to rename this empty as shoulder bands empty. Just hide that. And then Shift A, image, background, shoulder mesh. There we are. So we're going to do exactly the same as what we did for the previous one. So drag that into position there. Scroll in so we can see it a little bit better. And then scale this image in so it lines up with the top there. Lovely. And then we can sort of ignore that for... No, let's not ignore it for a minute. Let's do it now. So we can duplicate this cube as well, because the cube is what we're going to cut into so we can make the cuts across the mesh. So duplicate that cube, hide the original, and you can see all the numbers that we need here. So take our shoulder bands object, Shift D, right click to confirm, and call it shoulder mesh. Let's hide the shoulder bands. By the way, I hope this all makes sense. If it doesn't, if I'm going too quick or you need anything explained, then please do shout at me. But yeah, with our shoulder mesh object selected, in fact, let's just pick our cube. And what we need to do is start cutting into the cube. So I'm just changing back to bounding box center. I don't think I'll need to, but I'm just doing it for the sake of it. So with our cube selected, tab into edit mode. And the first thing we're going to do is Control R to add a loop cut. Drag it to the top here, and then you can see it, the first cut needs to be 26 mils down from the top. So grab Z minus 26. You know what? Again, I'm being an idiot. Let's ignore that for a minute. What we want to do first is tab into edit mode in our shoulder mesh. Select these top verts here. And we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to scale, Shift Z, and just drag it out until it covers the top of this mesh here. And then again for the bottom, we're going to select these bottom verts, S for scale, Shift Z just to stop it from scaling in the Z direction, and then just drag it so it covers the size of the mesh. There, perfect. Should have done that first, sorry about that. Right, back into the cube. We've made our first cut that's 26 mils from the top, and now we want to add this big cut here. So that's 200 mils down from the top. So again, tab into edit mode in the cube, Control R to add a loop cut, and then let's drag it GG up to here, and then just grab Z minus 200, and then we want to do this cut here, so that's 114 mils from the top. So again, Control R, loop cut, drag up, then GZ minus 114. Perfect. And then we'll do exactly what we did last time. We'll make a copy of this cube. So hover over one of the verts, press L, it selects everything, press Shift D, and then right click to confirm that, grab Y, and let's just move him over there. And then with both of these selected, we're going to click on the shoulder mesh object, and then Control J, join them together, tab into edit mode, press K for knife, hover over this first vert here, click, and then drag over to this friend over here. Press C to make sure it's cutting through the whole mesh, then drag down, snap to that vert there, across, then drag down and across, and press enter to confirm those cuts. Then again, let's L and L on these cubes, X, delete vertices, and then we can start getting rid of some of these points. So drag this top layer here and this bottom layer here, press X, delete vertices. There we are. So now we have an object that is the size and shape of our shoulder mesh. So it doesn't look like much yet, but it will. So let's just right click, shade smooth, and then let's just hide it for the minute and bring back our shoulder bands. Okay, let's go back into 3. We can get rid of this, or we can hide this this empty here. There we are. And let's bring back our shoulder bands empty, which is that. And we basically want to do exactly the same thing. So we've got that cube that we originally made. So unhide him, go back into wireframe mode, and then we basically just need to do exactly what we've just done here. So tab into the cube, Control R, add a loop cut, drag him right up to the top. Then it looks like it should be 78 mils down from the top. So grab Z minus 78. Perfect. And then, see, it gets a bit confusing here. So this is only through trial and error that I learned this. This measurement here is 96 mils. So Control R, drag up to the last loop cut we made, GZ minus 96. And then from the bottom, again, we need a 96 mil cut. So drag to the bottom, grab Z 96, and then we need to do this 50 mil cut. So Control R, drag up here, grab Z minus 50, and then here, drag down GZ 50. And again, we're going to duplicate this cube. So hover over a vert, press L, Shift D, right click, grab Y, move them over here, and then tab out of edit mode, grab our shoulder bands object by pressing Control or Shift and just select the object directly. Control J, join them together, and we're going to do that knife tool trick again. So tab into edit mode, press K for knife, snap it to that vert there, click and drag across to its neighbour, press C to make sure it cuts through everything, and again we're just going to go up and down like we did last time. Over there, over there, and there. And now we can delete these cubes again. So L to select everything there, L there, X, vertices. And now we can start deleting things again. So we don't need this row. In fact, let's do this in face mode. So press 3 for face mode, click and drag over this row here, then shift, click and drag over this row here, X, delete faces. And now if we go back into solid mode, let's bring back all of our objects. So tab out of edit mode, we've got the shoulder bands here, we've got the shoulder mesh here, which is slightly outside it, and then we've got the shoulders themselves. So at the moment everything is on top of each other. What we need to do is start cutting into it and revealing all the different parts. So let's work on one object at a time. Let's hide the shoulder mesh, and in fact we can hide the shoulders as well. So we're just going to work on these bands. So go into right orthographic view, and what we need to do is start cutting out these shapes. So the easiest way of doing it is if you go into wireframe shading, and we'll tab into edit mode, and let's just start dragging some of these vertices across. So go 1 for vertex mode, and we want to use the existing geometry to start creating these different shapes. So really the easiest way of doing it, we can probably knife from over here to over here. And I guess the easiest way of doing it, right, I'm going to show you what a problem would be, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So if we select this vert here, you see it's only selected the back one. Like it's a problem with Blender. What you need to do is, well, actually it's not a problem with Blender. Blender is doing everything it needs to be doing. It's just an irritating thing that I don't like. So if you want to select both of these verts, the front and the back one, just click and drag around them. And then what we want to do is manually position this vertex so it's in line with that. So press GG to slide along an edge, and there you are. And now what we can do, deselect everything, press K for our knife tool. Let's select this point here and drag down to this point here. Before clicking it, press C to make sure it cuts through everything, and then click that and enter to confirm. And now what we can do is again highlight everything, and then highlight these verts here, press X, delete vertices, and then as you can see we've got that shape that we need. Lovely. And let's do exactly the same for the bottom one. So again this is where the plans don't necessarily add up with the actual dimensions, but it's fine. So let's do exactly the same thing again. Let's make sure everything is deselected, drag around this vert here, and we want to GG along the edge so it goes to there. Let's do this a little bit more. Let's grab this one, GG. Oh, we don't even have to knife through this one because it's that's actually lined up really, really well. So let's just highlight this row of verts here, X, delete vertices. Oh, there we go, that's perfect. That's worked really, really well. And then let's just right click, shade auto smooth. Now what I want to do is bring back the shoulders. Actually, let's shade that auto smooth as well. So left click that, shade auto smooth. And that's perfect. Now we need to give these bands a bit of thickness because right now they are paper thin. So with these objects selected, there are a couple of different ways of doing it. And according to the plans, they should be about 1.5 millimeters. So we can do this a couple of different ways. Probably the easiest way of doing it is with this object selected. Let's tab into edit mode, press A to select everything, 3 for face mode. What we can do is no, it's not actually. What we can do is E for extrude, right click, so it's extruded those faces but now directly on top of each other. Press scale, press shift and Z, because again we don't want it going from top to bottom, and we're just going to drag towards the center. And using these coordinates over here, I don't know if you can see, it says 0.97. It's not particularly accurate. Let's undo all of that actually. So Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. I'll show you the other way I'm going to do it. So let's just make sure it hasn't created any doubles. Merge vertices by distance 0. So instead what we're going to do, with this selected, go over to our modifiers, add modifier, generate, solidify. And now we can specify exactly how many mils that we want. Now the reason I don't like this is it tends to move things in the Z direction, but we can fix that. So we know we need it to be about 1.5. So in thickness, let's type in 1.5. That's lovely. Good, so it's only thin, but it's there. And let's apply that and hide our shoulder section. Now, what I mean by moving things in the Z direction, you can see now here, we've got all these points at the bottom, which we don't want. So a very, very easy way of solving this. Let's highlight, so when we drag over, we want to get all these points at the bottom, like that. And then we want to do is S for scale, Z, and then number pad 0. And it just flattens them all out. And then we can actually type in over here what height we need. So we need it to be minus 30. There you go. Perfect. And then we do the same for this one here. Let's go scale Z 0. And I think we need that one to be yeah, so we just need to drag that up a little bit. So what we can do is GG, edge slide it up so it's sat on the 20mm mark. In fact, let's just do it with this grid line here. And select all these. Scale Z0. Let's just drag it up so it's on the grid line. Lovely. And then this one here. Scale Z0. Drag him up so he's on the grid line. Nearly done. This line here. Scale Z0. GG, and just move him so he's on the grid line. And scale Z0, and again, GG, move him up so he's on the grid line. So now it has a bit of thickness to it. It's not much, but it's there. Cool. Let's bring back our shoulder section. Lovely. And the last thing we need to do, and I think this will be the last thing I do in this tutorial, is the mesh. Let's bring back our mesh. You see it's covering everything. Let's go back into right orthographic by pressing 3. Let's bring back, let's get rid of the shoulder bands empty and bring back what I've helpfully called empty.001. Go back into wireframe mode, and we just need to do the same thing that we did for the shoulder section. So let's get rid of shoulder band section. So let's get rid of the bands, get rid of the shoulders, and we just need to make this angle from here to here. So what I'm going to do is grab this vertex here, GG, drag him back over here. K, knife tool, select this point here, drag him down to here, press C, left mouse button, enter to confirm the cut, and just get rid of these. So now we have the mesh, we have the shoulder section, and we have the shoulder bands. So let's get rid of this image at the back, and let's just bring everything back by pressing Alt H. Oh, we can get rid of this empty as well. There we are. and go back into solid mode. So we have a couple of objects on top of each other. What we're going to do with the shoulder bands, I'm probably going to do it with a texture. There are ways of modeling the mesh, but it's a lot of polygons and vertices for very little reward. So I'll show you how to do it with a texture. But let's just hide that for the minute. And you can see the Dalek is really starting to take shape. And let's unhide there. So I think that's where we'll leave things at this stage. So now we've got a Dalek skirt, hemispheres, fender, shoulder section, shoulder bands, and the mesh ready to go. So Control S, save everything, and in the next tutorial we're going to go through the gun box, and we'll start putting some bevels on as well. But yay, well done for making it this far, thank you so much, and I will see you soon.